The cowboy who carried her became her only hope after she fell from the ridge. The morning sun rose slowly over the Montana hills, painting the rocky ridges in shades of gold and orange. Emily tightened the straps on her backpack and adjusted her hat, squinting against the early light. She loved mornings like this. The quiet, the crisp air, the way the mountains seemed to stretch forever. Today she had decided to hike a trail she had never tried before. The path ran along the high ridge, narrow and lined with jagged rocks, but the view at the top was supposed to be breathtaking. Emily was an experienced hiker. She had climbed mountains, crossed forests, and walked trails that scared less adventurous people. She liked the challenge, the feeling of freedom that came with being surrounded by nature. But even with experience, she knew she had to be careful. The ridge was beautiful, yes, but also dangerous. One wrong step could mean disaster. Emily's boots crunched against the dry leaves and loose gravel on the trail as she carefully made her way along the ridge. The wind brushed against her face, cool but not cold, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. Birds called from the trees below, and somewhere in the distance, a small creek gurgled over stones. She paused for a moment to take in the view. Rolling hills stretched as far as she could see, dotted with forests and open meadows. The sun reflected off distant streams, sparkling like tiny ribbons of silver. Emily smiled. This was why she hiked, to feel alive, to see the world from above, to find peace in places far from the chaos of daily life. But the ridge was narrow, barely wide enough for one person to walk comfortably. On one side, the rocks dropped sharply, forming a steep slope that led down into a rocky valley. Emily moved slowly, placing each foot carefully, testing the ground before stepping. She had done this kind of hike many times before, yet today, something felt different. Maybe it was the loose gravel under her boots, or perhaps the wind that had suddenly picked up. She shook the thought away, telling herself she was being cautious enough. Halfway along the ridge, Emily stopped again. Her legs were starting to feel tired, and her backpack, though not heavy, seemed to weigh more with each step. She bent down to adjust the straps, tugging them tighter across her shoulders. She glanced down at the slope beside her. The rocks were jagged and uneven, some jutting out like broken teeth. She thought about how far she had come, and how beautiful the view was, but also how careful she needed to be. As she straightened up, Emily took a deep breath and started moving again. She felt confident, almost too confident, thinking she had done this hundreds of times before. She focused on the path in front of her, not paying much attention to the loose gravel at her feet. One small step, she thought, and everything would be fine. But then her foot slipped. It happened so quickly that she barely had time to react. The loose gravel shifted beneath her boot, and her balance faltered. She reached out instinctively for something to hold on to, but there was nothing solid nearby. The world seemed to tilt, and for a terrifying moment she felt herself falling. She tumbled down the rocky slope, hitting jagged stones along the way. Pain shot through her leg as she landed awkwardly, and she felt a sharp sting in her ankle. Emily gasped and tried to move, but her ankle refused to cooperate. She looked around, panic rising in her chest. She was alone. The ridge above seemed impossibly far, and the rocks below were jagged and unforgiving. Her backpack had shifted during the fall, and the straps were cutting into her shoulders. She tried to take a deep breath, but the pain made it hard to focus. Tears pricked at her eyes, not just from the pain, but from fear. What if no one found her? What if she couldn't get help in time? Minutes felt like hours as Emily tried to assess her situation. She realized she could not climb back up on her own. Her ankle was twisted badly, and every attempt to move caused sharp, stabbing pain. The ridge she had admired just moments ago now felt like a trap, a dangerous place where one small mistake could have serious consequences. She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to make herself as comfortable as possible, though the jagged rocks pressed into her back. The wind howled around her, louder now, rattling the loose stones and carrying a chill that made her shiver. She pulled her jacket tighter around her, wishing she had thought to wear warmer layers. She tried to call out for help, but her voice seemed tiny against the vastness of the mountains. "Hello? Is anyone there?" she shouted, hoping the echo might reach someone nearby, but only the wind answered. The valley below seemed endless, and the sun was climbing higher in the sky, leaving her feeling more isolated than ever. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm her racing heart. She thought about the people she loved, her family and friends, and the life waiting for her back in town. She didn't want it to end like this, alone on a ridge with no one to help. She tried to focus on her breathing, in and out, slow and steady, telling herself she could survive. She had faced challenges before, and she could face this one too. As she waited, she heard the faint sound of movement in the distance. At first, she thought it was her imagination, just the wind or a bird flying nearby. But then she heard it again, closer this time. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Relief flooded through her, and she tried to shout louder, waving her arms even though it hurt. "Help! Over here!" she cried, her voice trembling. She didn't know who it was yet, but whoever it was, she felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone was coming, and maybe, just maybe, she would be okay. She focused on staying awake, keeping her eyes open, and moving as little as possible to avoid making her injury worse. She listened to the footsteps growing closer, the sound of careful movement across the rocky terrain. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know if the person approaching would be able to help her, but she had to try. She called out again, her voice louder this time, stronger, fueled by hope. "Please, I need help." The sound carried down the ridge, bouncing off the rocks, and she saw a shadow moving closer. Someone was really coming. Even though she was scared, Emily felt a spark of courage. She reminded herself to stay calm, to trust that help was on the way, and to focus on surviving until someone reached her. The pain in her ankle was intense, but she gritted her teeth and breathed through it. She tried to move just enough to show she was alive, waving her arms slightly. Minutes later, the shadow became clearer. A figure appeared at the top of the slope, moving cautiously but steadily. Emily could see the shape of a person, dressed in practical outdoor clothing, carrying a pack, and looking down at her with concern. Relief washed over her, mingling with exhaustion and pain. She realized that, finally, help had arrived. For the first time since she fell, Emily felt a sense of hope. She knew the journey to safety would not be easy. The slope was still dangerous, and she was injured. But with this person coming to her, she felt a chance at survival. She closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath, and prepared herself for whatever was about to happen next. She didn't know the person yet, didn't know their name, or if they were strong enough to help. But she knew one thing for certain. She was not alone anymore. And in the vast, wild Montana hills, that made all the difference. Emily's eyes opened slowly as the figure above her moved closer. The early morning sun glinted off the person's hat, and she could see a pair of strong, steady hands gripping a rope. Relief washed over her in a wave, but fear lingered as she realized she was still trapped, still on the jagged slope, and still in pain. Her ankle throbbed fiercely, and every movement sent sharp jolts through her leg. She gritted her teeth and tried to stay calm, knowing that panicking would make things worse. The figure finally reached the edge of the slope and crouched down carefully. Emily could see him clearly now. He was a man, tall and rugged, dressed in worn jeans and a heavy jacket that looked like it had seen many days of outdoor work. His face was kind but focused, and his eyes scanned the rocks around her with practiced precision. He didn't rush. He didn't act careless. He seemed to know exactly what he was doing. "Are you hurt badly?" he asked in a calm voice. Emily tried to answer, but the words caught in her throat. I think my ankle," she whispered, pointing to the twisted joint. She tried to move it slightly, but the pain made her wince. The man nodded, understanding immediately. "Okay, don't try to move. Just stay still. I'm going to help you," he said. His voice was steady, and there was a quiet confidence that made Emily believe him instantly. She could feel herself relax a little, though the fear in her chest remained. The man carefully examined the slope around her, looking for the safest path down. He set down his pack and pulled out a coil of strong rope. Emily watched as he tested each foothold before stepping onto the loose rocks. Every movement was deliberate. He seemed to know the ridge like he had walked it 100 times. Emily admired his skill and courage, wishing she could move as easily as he did. "I'm going to make a sling to support your leg," he explained. "Once I have you secured, we'll move slowly down. Can you stay awake and alert for me?" Emily nodded, grateful for the kindness in his voice. She hated feeling helpless, but she knew he was her only chance. The man worked efficiently, tying knots and creating a secure support for her injured ankle. He spoke quietly as he worked, asking simple questions about her name, where she had come from, and how she had fallen. Emily answered as best as she could, trying not to cry. Talking distracted her from the pain and fear, and it reminded her that she was not alone. Once the sling was ready, he tested it carefully, lifting her ankle gently to make sure it was secure. "All right, we're going to move slowly," he said. "One step at a time. I've got you." Emily nodded, her heart racing. She knew the hardest part was still ahead, getting down the slope without slipping or causing more injury. He signaled for her to hold onto the rope he had anchored at the top of the ridge. Emily reached out, her fingers trembling, and gripped it tightly. The rope felt rough against her palms, but it was strong. She focused on breathing steadily, in and out, and tried to relax her body as much as she could. Step by step, he guided her down the slope. His movements were careful and precise, and he kept talking to her, giving her instructions and encouragement. Okay, shift your weight slowly. That's it. Perfect. Don't rush. Just like that. Emily felt each step carefully, trying not to wince as pain shot through her leg. She gritted her teeth and concentrated, trusting him completely. The wind had grown stronger now, whipping across the ridge and sending loose gravel skittering down into the valley. Emily felt it against her face, chilling her despite her jacket, but focused on the man's calm, steady voice. It anchored her, gave her courage, and helped her push past the fear. She had never felt so vulnerable, yet so safe at the same time. As they descended, Emily noticed the determination in his face. He was clearly used to working in dangerous conditions, but he moved with care, as if he understood the risk of even the smallest mistake. The ridge was unforgiving, and one slip could have been catastrophic. She felt the weight of how close she had come to serious harm, and a quiet gratitude filled her. Halfway down the slope, Emily paused for a moment, exhausted and in pain. Her arms ached from gripping the rope, her back ached from supporting herself, and her ankle throbbed with every movement. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. The man noticed her pause and crouched beside her. "You're doing great," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know it hurts, but we're almost there. You just need to trust me a little longer." Emily nodded, swallowing hard. His words gave her strength. She could feel her fear slowly turning into determination. She had to make it for herself. The rocky slope grew steeper in places, and moving became more difficult. He guided her carefully around loose stones and jagged rocks, instructing her on where to place her hands and feet. Emily focused on his directions, blocking out the pain and the fear, trusting completely in his skill and judgment. At one point, a small rock shifted under her weight, and she felt herself slipping slightly. Panic surged through her chest, but he reacted instantly, grabbing her and steadying her with a firm, careful hold. "It's okay," he said calmly, keeping her from falling. "Just a little slip. You're safe. We'll keep going." Emily exhaled, feeling her heart beat slow as she realized how close she had come to another accident. Minutes turned into what felt like hours as they continued their descent. The man's patience and care never wavered. He spoke to her, keeping her calm, telling her stories about the area, the mountains, and the ranch where he worked. Emily listened, grateful for the distraction. It made the time pass more quickly and kept her mind off the pain. Eventually, they reached a slightly flatter area where the slope was less treacherous. Emily's legs shook from the effort and tension, and her breathing was heavy. The man encouraged her to take a moment to rest, supporting her as she leaned against a sturdy rock. She closed her eyes for a few seconds, letting the relief wash over her. She was still in pain, still scared, but the immediate danger had passed. The man checked her ankle again, gently moving it to make sure it was not broken beyond the sling's support. "You're going to need proper medical help soon," he said. "But for now, we can move at a steady pace. You're doing really well." Emily nodded, her gratitude overwhelming her. She wanted to thank him properly, but words seemed inadequate. How could she ever repay someone for saving her life? They resumed their careful descent, moving slowly but steadily. The ridge finally began to give way to a wider path, and Emily could see trees and brush below. She felt a flicker of hope. Safety was near. She could almost taste it. The man kept guiding her, speaking words of encouragement, telling her to stay calm, to trust him, to focus on each step. Emily followed his instructions, feeling more confident with each careful move. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the base of the slope. Emily sank to the ground, exhausted but alive. The jagged ridge loomed above her, and she realized how close she had come to disaster. She looked up at the man, her eyes full of gratitude. You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled, a quiet, humble smile. "Just glad you're okay. Let's get you somewhere safe and get that ankle checked. You've been very brave." Emily nodded, trying to stand, but her ankle protested sharply. The man supported her, helping her take slow, careful steps toward safer ground. She realized she could not have done it without him. Every step reminded her of the courage and skill it had taken to carry her down the ridge. As they moved, Emily felt a new sense of respect for the rugged, kind man who had rescued her. She didn't know his name yet, but she knew one thing: she would never forget him. And she would never forget this morning, the morning the mountains had tested her and the man who had carried her through danger to safety. Emily leaned heavily on the man's strong shoulder as they moved slowly away from the base of the ridge. Her ankle throbbed painfully with every step, and the muscles in her legs were stiff from the fall and the effort of climbing and gripping the rocks. Even though the immediate danger of the ridge was behind her, she realized she was far from safe. The nearest road was still a long distance away, and she was in the middle of rugged wilderness. The man guided her carefully through a narrow path that wound down the side of the hill. His hands were steady and strong, supporting her weight and keeping her balanced. Emily was silent for a while, still in shock from what had happened. She tried to focus on her breathing, slow and steady, to calm herself. The world around her was quiet except for the wind in the trees and the occasional rustle of a small animal in the underbrush. "You're doing well," the man said quietly, breaking the silence. "Just a little further. We're going to get you somewhere safe." Emily looked at him, grateful for his calm, steady presence. She realized that without him, she would still be alone on that ridge, injured and scared. He hadn't hesitated, hadn't panicked, and had guided her with skill and patience. That thought gave her a little courage to keep going. As they moved, Emily noticed how the man scanned the surroundings carefully. His eyes missed nothing. The path, the trees, the rocks, even the small changes in the ground. He seemed to be calculating every step, every hold, every place they might rest. She realized that he had probably dealt with dangerous situations before, though he didn't seem boastful or proud. He was simply focused on keeping her safe. "Do you hike often?" he asked after a while, his voice gentle. Emily nodded. "I love it," she said. "I've been hiking for years, but I think this ridge was too risky, and I wasn't paying enough attention. I guess I got overconfident." He smiled slightly. "Even the best hikers make mistakes. The important thing is that you're okay now." Emily felt a wave of relief. It was true. She had survived, and she was being helped. She tried to smile, though her pain and exhaustion made it difficult. The path began to slope more steeply downward, and the man adjusted his hold on her, making sure she didn't put any weight on her injured ankle. He guided her step by step, careful not to let her slip on the loose dirt or rocks. Emily's hands ached from gripping his arm and the nearby branches for support, but she tried not to think about it. She focused only on the next step, trusting him completely. Suddenly, a small branch snapped under Emily's hand, startling her. She cried out, and the man tightened his grip. "It's okay," he said calmly. "Don't worry, I've got you." His confidence was contagious, and Emily took a deep breath to steady herself. She realized that panic would only make the situation worse. She had to stay calm and follow his instructions. They continued slowly, moving through thick brush and scattered rocks. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the temperature began to rise. Emily could feel sweat on her forehead and the back of her neck. The effort of walking on uneven ground with an injured ankle was exhausting, but she pressed on. Every step was painful, but she knew she had to keep going if she wanted to reach help. After a while, they reached a small clearing. Emily sank onto a flat rock, relieved for a moment of rest. The man knelt beside her, checking her ankle carefully. "It's swollen," he said, frowning slightly. "We need to get you to a proper clinic, or at least someone who can check it. But for now, we'll rest a bit and figure out the best way down." Emily nodded, grateful for his attention. She looked around the clearing, noticing the beauty of the mountains again. Despite the pain and fear, there was something peaceful about the landscape. The tall trees, the gentle sound of a distant stream, and the birds calling from the branches. For a moment, she almost forgot the danger she had been in. Almost. As they rested, the man spoke quietly about his life. He worked on a nearby ranch, he said, tending to cattle and maintaining the land. He was used to the mountains and the risks that came with them. Emily listened, fascinated. She had always admired people who lived close to nature and knew how to survive in it. Now she realized just how much skill and courage it took. After a few minutes, the man helped Emily to her feet again. "We can't stay here too long," he said. "We need to keep moving. There's a road not too far from here, and we can get you to someone who can help with your ankle." Emily nodded, trusting him completely. She felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. She wanted to make it, wanted to survive, wanted to thank him properly. Step by step, they continued. The path grew rougher in places, with loose rocks and tangled roots. Emily's ankle ached sharply with every step, but she pressed on, leaning on him and gripping branches for support. The man guided her carefully, sometimes stopping to test the ground before moving forward. Emily realized that every step required patience, focus, and trust. Halfway through their journey, a sudden noise startled them. A small rock slide further up the slope. Gravel tumbled down toward them, and Emily froze. The man reacted immediately, pulling her behind a large boulder. "Stay here," he said calmly. "It's okay. We're safe." Emily's heart pounded, but she followed his instructions, realizing how important it was to stay calm in dangerous situations. The rock slide passed, and the man checked her ankle again. "Still okay," he said. "We can keep going. Just be careful." Emily nodded, feeling a renewed sense of trust and gratitude. She realized that he had saved her life not once but twice, first from the fall and now from the dangers of the slope. They moved slowly, carefully navigating the remaining obstacles. Emily's arms ached, her back ached, and her ankle throbbed painfully, but she felt a growing sense of hope. The road and help were near, and she could see the man's skill and determination guiding them safely. She focused on each step, blocking out the pain, trusting him completely. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the edge of the forested path. In the distance, Emily could see a dirt road winding through the hills. Relief flooded her. She had made it this far, and the end of her struggle was in sight. She wanted to cry, but instead she smiled through the exhaustion, grateful for the man who had carried her through so much. As they stepped onto the road, Emily looked at him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." He smiled, humble and quiet. "Just glad you're okay," he said. "That's all that matters." For the first time since her fall, Emily felt a sense of safety. The ridge was behind her, the danger was behind her, and she was moving toward help. She leaned on the man as they walked, every step bringing her closer to recovery. She realized that courage, skill, and kindness had saved her life today, and she would never forget it. The dirt road stretched ahead, winding through the golden hills, lined with tall pine trees and scattered boulders. For the first time since the fall, Emily thought she could almost relax. The ridge, the slope, and the jagged rocks were behind her, or so she hoped. She leaned on the man's arm, trying to catch her breath and ease the pain in her ankle. Even though the danger of the ridge had passed, Emily quickly realized that the journey was far from over. The road seemed longer than it looked, and the wilderness still held challenges of its own. The man, whose name Emily now learned was Jake, kept a steady pace beside her. "We're close to a ranger station," he explained. "It won't be long now. Just take it slow, step by step." Emily nodded, grateful for his calm voice. His presence had become a lifeline to her, steadying her nerves and giving her courage to keep moving despite the pain. At first the road seemed easy, wide and firm beneath their feet, but as they continued, the terrain changed. Loose gravel appeared in patches, and the road narrowed as it wound between rocky outcrops. Emily's ankle screamed in protest, and she almost tripped several times. Each time, Jake caught her, holding her steady. "Careful," he said gently. "You're doing fine. Just don't rush." His calm confidence gave her strength, and she pressed on, step by careful step. As they climbed a small hill, a gust of wind swept across the valley, rustling the trees and carrying a chill. Emily shivered, her exhaustion and pain making her feel weak. She stopped for a moment, leaning on Jake, and felt tears welling in her eyes. The fear, the pain, and the sheer effort of surviving, everything from the fall to the treacherous slope, were overwhelming. Jake noticed her pause and knelt beside her. "It's okay," he said softly. "You've been through a lot. Just breathe for a moment. You're safe with me." Emily closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, letting his words soothe her. For the first time since the fall, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her fear, pain, and relief. She had survived, but she was exhausted, and the climb to safety had tested her in every way. After a brief rest, they continued along the road. The sun climbed higher, and the air warmed slightly. Emily's legs shook with every step, but she focused on Jake's steady guidance. He watched her carefully, ready to catch her at a moment's notice. The trust she felt in him was almost overwhelming. She had been terrified moments ago, but now, relying on someone else's strength felt comforting. Suddenly, the road ahead narrowed sharply as it passed between two large boulders. Emily's heart raced as she tried to navigate the uneven path. Her ankle twisted slightly, sending a sharp pain up her leg. She cried out softly, and Jake immediately steadied her. "Careful," he said, adjusting his hold. "We're almost past this part. Just a few more steps." Emily gritted her teeth, forcing herself to keep going. Every step hurt, but she focused on the goal: safety. She imagined the ranger station ahead, someone who could help her properly, and the thought gave her courage. She realized that her survival depended not just on physical strength, but on mental determination. She could not let fear control her. As they rounded the boulders, a small stream appeared across the road. Basis, water gurgled over stones, clear and cold. Emily's eyes widened. She had to cross, but the rocks were slippery, and one misstep could send her tumbling. Jake knelt beside her. "We'll take it slowly. Watch my step, and copy me. Lean on me if you need to." Together they crossed the stream. Emily focused on Jake's movements, placing her feet carefully on the stable rocks. The cold water splashed around them, and her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and relief. Once they reached the other side safely, she sank down for a moment, gasping and smiling through the pain.
"We made it," she whispered.
Jake smiled, though his eyes remained watchful. "We're not out of the woods yet, but you're doing great. Just a little further now." Emily nodded, her body trembling from fatigue, pain, and adrenaline. The journey had tested her in every way, but she had survived it, step by careful step, guided by Jake's skill and calm presence. The road ahead began to flatten, and Emily could see the faint outline of a ranger station in the distance. Her heart leapt with hope. Relief and gratitude flooded through her. She had survived the fall, the treacherous slope, and the difficult walk to safety. Now she could finally rest, and someone would be there to care for her ankle properly. As they approached the ranger station, Emily's exhaustion almost overcame her. She sank to the ground briefly, unable to take another step. Jake knelt beside her, supporting her. "Almost there," he said softly. "You're gonna be okay." Emily looked up at him, tears in her eyes. She realized how much she depended on him, not just for strength, but for hope and courage. Finally, they reached the ranger station. A door opened, and a ranger stepped out, looking surprised, but ready to help. "What happened?" the ranger asked quickly. Jake explained briefly, pointing to Emily's injured ankle. The ranger nodded and helped guide Emily inside. She felt a wave of relief wash over her. The worst was over. Inside, Emily was carefully seated, and the ranger examined her ankle. "It's swollen, but thankfully not broken," he said. "You're lucky. With proper care and rest, you'll recover fully." Emily exhaled, relief flooding her. She looked at Jake, who smiled quietly. "See? I told you we'd make it," he said. For the first time since the fall, Emily allowed herself to relax completely. Her body ached, her ankle throbbed, but she was safe. She realized how close she had come to disaster, and how brave and skilled Jake had been in guiding her through danger. Gratitude filled her heart. She had been terrified, but she had survived, and someone had been there to carry her through the worst. As Emily rested, she thought about the journey, the ridge, the slope, the narrow path, the stream, and every difficult step along the way. Each challenge had tested her courage, patience, and determination. And, through it all, Jake had been there, calm, steady, and determined to save her. She realized that courage wasn't just about surviving the fall. It was about trusting, relying on others, and pushing forward even when everything seemed impossible. Eventually, Emily was able to sit comfortably, her ankle wrapped and supported. She smiled at Jake, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and relief in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." Jake shook his head. "Just glad you're okay. That's all that matters." Emily nodded, feeling tears welling up again. She realized that bravery wasn't just about the person who falls. It was also about the person who reaches out to help. Without Jake, she wouldn't have made it. With him, she had survived one of the scariest experiences of her life. As she rested in the warmth and safety of the ranger station, Emily reflected on the events of the morning. The ridge had seemed beautiful, inviting, and peaceful, but it had hidden danger beneath its surface. One small misstep had sent her tumbling. Yet she had survived because of courage, skill, and kindness. And as she looked at Jake, she understood something important. Sometimes survival isn't just about what you can do on your own. It's about trusting others and accepting help when it's offered. The ranger brought water and helped her sit comfortably. Emily took a sip, feeling her strength slowly returning. She looked out the window at the ridge she had fallen from. The sunlight glinted off the rocks, serene and beautiful. It seemed peaceful now, but she knew how dangerous it could be. She had learned respect for the mountains, for their beauty, and for their hidden risks. And she had learned the value of courage and kindness in the face of fear. As the day wore on, Emily felt safe, tired, and grateful. She had survived the fall, the treacherous slope, and the difficult journey down to the road. She had trusted Jake, and he had guided her to safety. And now, resting in the warmth of the ranger station, she knew she would never forget this day. The day the ridge had tested her, the day fear had pushed her to her limits, and the day kindness had carried her through the worst.